Hey guys, before the episode starts, just had to jump in really quick and let you know that patrons are getting the full final chapter. Unfortunately, I had to split it up to cover 2 weeks here because I wanted to be able to have a chapter for both weeks. But if you are a patron, you are getting to enjoy the full final chapter way before everybody else gets to enjoy it. So that's one of the perks of becoming a patron. Go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com, sign up and become a patron, support the show, and get episodes early. Welcome back to Another World Audiobooks. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hopefully this isn't too disappointing, but I decided I'm going to have to go ahead and chop this final chapter into 2 sections, which I hate doing. I hate doing that, but just, life stuff gets in the way. Gotta do what you gotta do. I wanted to get you guys an episode, though, so I do have the first half of this chapter. It leaves at a very satisfying cliffhanger. Satisfying for the storyteller. I don't think it'll be satisfying for you. Sorry, but it's going to make you want to tune in even more to next week when we're going to have the final half of the final chapter to wrap up this book. It has been such a wild ride, such a fun book to do. Hope you guys have enjoyed it and are looking forward to the conclusion here next week. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it. I give you the first half of the final chapter of The Hollow Needle. Chapter 10. The Treasures of the Kings of France. A curtain was drawn back. Good morning, my dear Boutelet. You're a little late. Lunch was fixed for 12. However, it's only a few minutes. But what's the matter? Don't you know me? Have I changed so much? In the course of his fight with Lupin, Boutelet had met with many surprises, and he was still prepared, at the moment of the final catastrophe, to experience any number of further emotions. But the shock which he received this time was utterly unexpected. It was not astonishment, but stupefaction, terror. The man who stood before him, the man whom the brutal force of events compelled him to look upon as Arsene Lupin, was Valmira. Valmira, the owner of the Château d'Aiguille. Valmira, the very man to whom he had applied for assistance against Arsene Lupin. Valmira, his companion on the expedition to Crozon. Valmira, the plucky friend who had made Raymond's escape possible by felling one of Lupin's accomplices, or pretending to fell him in the dusk of the great hall. And Valmira was Lupin. So it's you, he stammered. Why not? Exclaimed Lupin. Did you think that you knew me for good and all because you had seen me in the guise of a clergyman, or under the features of Monsieur Mazarin? Alas, when a man selects the position in society which I occupy, he must needs make use of his little social gifts. If Lupin were not able to change himself at will into a minister of the Church of England, or a member of the Academy of Inscriptions and Belles-Lettres, it would be a bad lookout for Lupin. Now, Lupin, the real Lupin, is here before you, Boutelet. Take a good look at him. But then, if it's you, then, Mademoiselle... Yes, Boutelet, as you say. He again drew back the hanging, beckoned, and announced, Mademoiselle Arsene Lupin. Ah, murmured the lad, confounded in spite of everything. Mademoiselle de Saint-Véran. No, protested Lupin. Mademoiselle Arsene Lupin, or rather, if you prefer, Mademoiselle Louis Valmira, my wedded wife, married to me in accordance with the strictest forms of law, and all thanks to you, my dear Boutelet. He held out his hand to him. All my acknowledgments, and no ill will on your side, I trust. Strange to say, Boutelet felt no ill will at all, no sense of humiliation, no bitterness. He realized so strongly the immense superiority of his adversary that he did not blush at being beaten by him. He pressed the offered hand. Luncheon is served, ma'am. A butler had placed a tray of dishes on the table. You must excuse us, Boutelet. My chef is away, and we can only give you a cold lunch. Boutelet felt very little inclined to eat. He sat down, however, and was enormously interested in Lupin's attitude. How much exactly did he know? Was he aware of the danger he was running? Was he ignorant of the presence of Ganimard and his men? And Lupin continued. Yes, thanks to you, my dear friend. Certainly Raymond and I loved each other from the first. And just so, my boy, Raymond's abduction, her imprisonment, were mere humbug. We loved each other, and neither she nor I, were we free to love, would allow a casual bond at the mercy of chance to be formed between us. The position, therefore, was hopeless for Lupin. Fortunately, it ceased to be so, if I resumed my identity as Louis Valmira, as I had been from a child. It was then that I conceived the idea, as you refused to relinquish your quest, and had found the Chateau d'Aiguille, of profiting by your obstinacy.
And my silliness.
Anyone would have been caught as you were.
So you were really able to succeed because I screened you and assisted you?
Of course! How could anyone suspect Valmira of being Lupin when Valmira was Beaudelet's friend, and after Valmira had snatched from Lupin's clutches the girl whom Lupin loved? And how charming it was! Such delightful memories! The expedition to Crozon, the bouquets we found, my pretended love letter to Raymond, and later the precautions which I, Valmira, had to take against myself, Lupin, before my marriage. And the night of your great banquet, Beaudelet, when you fainted in my arms. Oh, what memories. There was a pause. Beaudelet watched Raymond. She had listened to Lupin without saying a word, and looked at him with eyes in which he read love, passion, and something else besides. Something which the lad could not define. A sort of anxious embarrassment and a vague sadness. But Lupin turned his eyes upon her, and she gave him an affectionate smile. Their hands met over the table. "What do you say to the way I have arranged my little home, Beaudelet?" cried Lupin. "There's a style about it, isn't there? I don't pretend that it's as comfortable as it might be, and yet some have been quite satisfied with it, and not the least of mankind either. Look at the list of distinguished people who have owned the needle in their time, and who thought it an honour to leave a mark of their sojourn." On the walls, one below the other, were carved the following names: Julius Caesar, Charlemagne Rollo, William the Conqueror, Richard Coeur de Lion, Louis XI, Francis I, Henry IV, Louis XIV, Arsene Lupin. "Whose names will figure after ours?" he continued. "Alas, the list is closed. From Caesar to Lupin, and there it ends. Soon the nameless mob will come to visit the strange citadel, and to think that, but for Lupin, all this would remain forever unknown to men. Ah, Beaudelet, what a feeling of pride was mine on the day when I first set foot on this abandoned soil. To have found the lost secret and become its master, its sole master, to inherit such an inheritance. To live in the Needle, after all those kings—" He was interrupted by a gesture of his wife's. She seemed greatly agitated.
"There is a noise," she said, "underneath us. You can hear it."
"It's the lapping of water," said Lupin.
"No, indeed it's not. I know the sound of the waves. This is something different."
"What would you have it be, darling?" said Lupin, smiling. "I invited no one to lunch except Beaudelet." And addressing the servant, "Charles, did you lock the staircase doors behind the gentlemen?" "Yes, sir, and fasten the bolts." Lupin rose. "Come, Raymond, don't shake like that. Why, you're quite pale." He spoke a few words to her in an undertone, as also to the servant, drew back the curtain, and sent them both out of the room. The noise below grew more distinct. It was a series of dull blows, repeated at intervals. Beaudelet thought,
"Ganimard has lost his patience and is breaking down the doors."
Lupin resumed the thread of his conversation, speaking very calmly and as though he had really not heard. "By Jove, the needle was badly damaged when I succeeded in discovering it. One could see that no one had possessed the secret for more than a century since Louis XIV and the Revolution. The tunnel was threatening to fall in. The stairs were in a shocking state. The water was trickling in from the sea. I had to prop it up and strengthen and rebuild the whole thing." Beaudelet could not help asking,
"When you arrived, was it empty?"
"Very nearly. The kings did not use the needle as I have done, as a warehouse."
"As a place of refuge, then?"
"Yes, no doubt, in times of invasion and during the civil wars. But its real destination was to be, how shall I put it, the strong room or the bank of the kings of France." The sound of blows increased, more distinctly now. Ganimard must have broken down the first door and was attacking the second. There was a short silence, and then more blows, nearer still. It was the third door. 2 remained. Through one of the windows, Beaudelet saw a number of fishing smacks sailing round the Needle, and, not far away, floating on the waters like a great black fish, the torpedo boat. "What a row!" exclaimed Lupin. "One can't hear oneself speak. Let's go upstairs, shall we? It may interest you to look over the Needle." They climbed to the floor above, which was protected, like the others, by a door which Lupin locked behind him. "My picture gallery," he said. The walls were covered with canvases on which Beaudelet recognized the most famous signatures. There were Raphael's Madonna of the Agnus Dei, André del Sarto's portrait of Lucrèce Fed, Titian's Salome, Botticelli's Madonna and Angels, and numbers of Tintoretto's, Carpaccio's, Rembrandt's, and Velasquez.
"What fine copies,"
said Beaudelet approvingly. Lupin looked at him with an air of stupefaction. "What? Copies? You must be mad. The copies are in Madrid, my dear fellow, in Florence, Venice, Munich, Amsterdam."
"Then these
are the original pictures, my lad, patiently collected in the museums of Europe, where I have replaced them, like an honest man, with first-rate copies."
"But some day or other,
the fraud will be discovered? Well, they will find my signature on each canvas at the back, and they will know that it was I who have endowed my country with the original masterpieces. After all, I have only done what Napoleon did in Italy. Look, Beaudelet, here are Monsieur de Jervois's 4 Rubenses." The knocking continued within the hollow of the Needle without ceasing. "I can't stand this," said Lupin. "Let's go higher." A fresh staircase, a fresh door. "The tapestry room," Lupin announced. The tapestries were not hung on the walls, but rolled, tied up with cord, ticketed, and, in addition, there were parcels of old fabrics which Lupin unfolded. Wonderful brocades, admirable velvets, soft faded silks, church vestments woven with silver and gold. They went higher still, and Beaudelet saw the room containing the clocks and other timepieces, the book-room. Oh, the splendid bindings, the precious undiscoverable volumes, the unique copies stolen from the great public libraries, the lace-room, the knick-knack room, and each time the circumference of the room grew smaller. And each time now the sound of knocking was more distant. Ganimard was losing ground. "This is the last room," said Lupin. "The treasury." This one was quite different. It was round also, but very high and conical in shape. It occupied the top of the edifice, and its floors must have been 15 or 20 yards below the extreme point of the Needle. On the cliff-side there was no window, but on the side of the sea, whence there was no indiscreet eyes to fear, 2 glazed openings admitted plenty of light. The ground was covered with the parquetted flooring of rare wood, forming concentric patterns. Against the walls stood glass cases and a few pictures. "The pearls of my collection," said Lupin. "All that you have seen so far is for sale. Things come and things go, that's business. But here in the sanctuary, everything is sacred. There is nothing here but choice, essential pieces, the best of the best priceless things. Look at these jewels, Beaudelet. Chaldean amulets, Egyptian necklaces, Celtic bracelets, Arab chains. Look at these statuettes, Beaudelet, at this Greek Venus, this Corinthian Apollo. Look at these Tanagras, Beaudelet, and all the real Tanagras are here. Outside of this glass case, there is not a single genuine Tanagra statuette in the whole wide world. What a delicious thing to be able to say! Beaudelet, do you remember Thomas and his gang of church pillagers in the south? Agents of mine, by the way. Well, here is the Amberzac reliquary, the real one, Beaudelet. Do you remember the Louvre scandal? The tiara, which was admitted to be false, invented and manufactured by a modern artist? Here is the tiara of Saint-Ophans, the real one, Beaudelet. Look, Beaudelet, look with all your eyes. Here is the marvel of marvels, the supreme masterpiece, the work of no mortal brain. Here is Leonardo's Gioconda, the real one. Kneel, Beaudelet, kneel! All womankind stands before you in this picture. There was a long silence between them. Below, the sounds of blows drew nearer. 2 or 3 doors, no more, separated them from Ganimard. In the offing they saw the black back of the torpedo boat and the fishing smacks cruising to and fro. The boy asked,
"And the treasure?"
"Ha, my little man, that's what interests you most. None of those masterpieces of human art can compete with the contemplation of the treasure as a matter of curiosity, eh? And the whole crowd will be like you. Come, you shall be satisfied." He stamped his foot, and in so doing, made one of the discs composing the floor pattern turn right over. Then, lifting it as though it were the lid of a box, he uncovered a sort of large, round bowl, dug in the thickness of the rock. It was empty. A little farther, he went through the same performance. Another large bowl appeared. It was also empty. He did this 3 times over again. The 3 other bowls were empty. "Eh?" grinned Lupin. "What a disappointment! Under Louis XI, under Henry IV, under Richelieu, the 5 bowls were full. But think of Louis XIV, the folly of Versailles, the wars, the great disasters of the reign. And think of Louis XV, the spendthrift king, and his Pompadour, and his Dubarry. How they must have drawn on the treasure in those days! With what thieving claws they must have scratched at the stone! You see, there's nothing left." He stopped. "Yes, Beaudelet, there is something. The 6th hiding place. This one was intangible. Not one of them dared touch it. It was the very last resource. The nest egg. The something put by for a rainy day. Look, Beaudelet." He stooped and lifted up the lid. An iron box filled the bowl. Lupin took from his pocket a key with a complicated bit and wards, and opened the box. A dazzling sight presented itself. Every sort of precious stone sparkled there. Every color gleamed. The blue of the sapphires, the red of the rubies, the green of the emeralds, the yellow of the topazes. "Look, look, little Beaudelet, they have squandered all the cash, all the gold, all the silver, all the crown pieces, and all the ducats, and all the doubloons, but the chest with the jewels has remained intact. Look at the settings. They belong to every period, to every century, to every country. The dowries of the queens are here." Each brought her share. Margaret of Scotland, and Charlotte of Savoy, Duchesses of Austria, Eleanor, Elizabeth, Marie Therese, Mary of England, and Catherine de' Medici, and all the arch, Marie Antoinette. Look at those pearls, Beaudelet, and those diamonds. Look at the size of the diamonds. Not one of them but is worthy of an empress. The Pitt diamond is no finer. He rose to his feet and held up his hand as one taking an oath. "Beaudelet, you shall tell the world that Lupin has not taken a single one of the stones that were in the royal chest. Not a single one. I swear it on my honor." "I had no right to. They are the fortune of France." Below them, Ganimard was making all speed. It was easy to judge by the reverberation of the blows that his men were attacking the last door but one, the door that gave access to the knick-knack room. "Let us leave the chest open," said Lupin, "and all the cavities too, all those little empty graves." He went round the room, examined some of the glass cases, gazed at some of the pictures, and, as he walked, said pensively, "How sad it is to leave all this! What a wrench! The happiest hours of my life have been spent here, alone, in the presence of these objects which I loved, and my eyes will never behold them again, and my hands will never touch them again." His drawn face bore such an expression of lassitude upon it, that Beaudelet felt a vague sort of pity for him. Sorrow in that man must assume larger proportions than in another, even as joy did, or pride, or humiliation. He was now standing by the window, and with his finger pointing to the horizon, said, "What is sadder still is that I must abandon that, all that. How beautiful it is, the boundless sea, the sky. On the other side, the cliffs of Etretat with their 3 natural archways, the Porte d'Armont, the Porte d'Arvol, the Maniport, so many triumphal arches for the master. And the master was I. I was the king of the story, the king of fairyland, the king of the Hollow Needle. A strange and supernatural kingdom, from Caesar to Lupin. What a destiny. He burst out laughing. King of fairyland! Why not say king of Yvetot at once? What nonsense! King of the world, yes, that's more like it. From this topmost point of the needle, I ruled the globe. I held it in my claws like a prey. Lift the tiara. Lift the tiara of cytophones, Beaudelet. You see those two telephones? The one on the right communicates with Paris, a private line. The one on the left with London, a private line. Through London, I am in touch with America, Asia, Australia, South America. In all those continents, I have my offices, my agents, my jackals, my scouts. I drive an international trade. I hold the great market in art and antiquities, the World's Fair. Ah, Beaudelet, there are moments when my power turns my head. I feel intoxicated with strength and authority. The door gave way below. They heard Ganimard and his men running about and searching. After a moment, Lupin continued in a low voice. And now it's over. A little girl crossed my path. A girl with soft hair and wistful eyes. And an honest, yes, an honest soul. And it's over. I myself am demolishing the mighty edifice. All the rest seems absurd and childish to me. Nothing counts but her hair, and her wistful eyes, and her honest little soul. The men came up from the staircase. A blow shook the door. The last door. Lupin seized the boy sharply by the arm. Do you understand, Beaudelet, why I let you have things your own way, when I could have crushed you time after time weeks ago? Do you understand how you succeeded in getting as far as this? Do you understand that I had given each of my men his share of the plunder when you met them the other night on the cliff? You do understand, don't you? The Hollow Needle is the great adventure. As long as it belongs to me, I remain the great adventurer. Once the needle is recaptured, it means that the past and I are parted, and that the future begins, a future of peace and happiness, in which I shall have no occasion to blush when Raymond's eyes are turned upon me, a future— He turned furiously toward the door. Stop that noise, Ganimard, will you? I haven't finished my speech. The blows came faster. It was like the sound of a beam that was being hurled against the door. Beaudelet, mad with curiosity, stood in front of Lupin and awaited events, without understanding what Lupin was doing or contemplating. To give up the needle was all very well, but why was he giving up himself? What was his plan? Did he hope to escape from Ganimard? And, on the other hand, where was Raymond? Lupin, meantime, was murmuring dreamily. An honest man. Arsene Lupin, an honest man. No more robbery, leading the life of everybody else. And why not? There is no reason why I should not meet with the same success. But do stop that now, Ganimard! Don't you know, you ass, that I am uttering historic words, and that Beaudelet is taking them in for the benefit of posterity? He laughed. I am wasting my time. Ganimard will never grasp the use of my historic words. He took a piece of red chalk, put a pair of steps to the wall, and wrote in large letters, Arsene Lupin gives and bequeaths to France all the treasures contained in the Hollow Needle, on the sole condition that these treasures be housed at the Musée du Louvre in rooms which shall be known as the Arsene Lupin rooms. Now, he said, my conscience is at ease. France and I are quits. The attackers were striking with all their might. One of the panels burst in two. A hand was put through and fumbled for the lock. Thunder! Said Lupin. That idiot of a Ganimard is capable of effecting his purpose for once in his life. He rushed to the lock and removed the key. Sold, old chap. The door's tough. I have plenty of time. Beaudelet, I must say goodbye. And thank you, for really you could have complicated the attack. But you're so tactful. While speaking, he moved toward a large triptych by Van der Weyden, representing the wise men of the East. He shut the right-hand panel, and in so doing exposed a little door concealed behind it, and seized the handle. Good luck to your hunting, Ganimard, and kind regards at home. A pistol shot resounded. Lupin jumped back. Ah, you rascal! Full in the heart! Have you been taking lessons? You've done for the wise man. Full in the heart. Smashed to smithereens like a pipe at the fair. Lupin, surrender! Roared Ganimard, with his eyes glittering and his revolver showing through the broken panel of the door. Surrender, I say! Did the old guard surrender? If you stir a limb, I'll blow your brains out. Nonsense, you can't get me here. As a matter of fact, Lupin had moved away, and though Ganimard was able to fire straight in front of him through the breach in the door, he could not fire, still less take aim, on the side where Lupin stood. Lupin's position was a terrible one for all that, because the outlet on which he was relying, the little door behind the triptych, opened right in front of Ganimard. To try to escape meant to expose himself to the detective's fire, and there were 5 bullets left in the revolver. By Jove, he said, laughing. There's a slump in my shares this afternoon. You've done a nice thing. Lupin, old fellow, you wanted a last sensation, and you've gone a bit too far. You shouldn't have talked so much. He flattened himself against the wall. A further portion of the panel had given way under the men's pressure, and Ganimard was less hampered in his movements. 3 yards, no more, separated the two antagonists. But Lupin was protected by a glass case with a gilt wood framework. "Why don't you help Boudelet?" cried the old detective, gnashing his teeth with rage. "Why don't you shoot him instead of staring at him like that?" Isidore, in fact, had not budged, had remained, till that moment, an eager but passive spectator. He would have liked to fling himself into the contest with all his strength, and to bring down the prey which he held at his mercy. He was prevented by some inexplicable sentiment. But Ganimard's appeal for assistance shook him. His hand closed on the butt of his revolver.
If I take part in it, he thought, Lupin is lost, and I have the right. It's my duty.
Their eyes met. Lupin's were calm, watchful, almost inquisitive, as though, in the awful danger that threatened him, he were interested only in the moral problem that held the young man in its clutches. Would Isidore decide to give the finishing stroke to the defeated enemy? The door cracked from top to bottom. "Help, Boudelet! We've got him!" Ganimard bellowed. Isidore raised his revolver. I tell you, such a satisfying cliffhanger, at least for me. Hope you guys don't mind that too much. Again, my apologies. I hate splitting up chapters when I can avoid it. I always do, and that's why you've gotten some long chapters here, long episodes here recently, and hope you have enjoyed them. We'll be back next week though with the final conclusion of this book, the final half of the final chapter. So hope you guys have enjoyed it, and thank you to our patrons who support the show and make this all possible. If you want to become a patron and make it so I don't have to split up episodes anymore, just go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com. There's a button where you can sign up to become a patron. That's a great way to support the podcast, help spread the word, as well as another great way. But yeah, the more support we receive, the longer chapters I can bring, the longer episodes and more chapters that I can bring you every week, which is always the goal. So thank you for that. So next week we'll wrap it up, and then the week after that we're going to be starting a brand new audiobook. So tune in, make sure you don't miss it, you're going to love it. If you do have any suggestions for books that we do in the future, I'd love to hear from you. I always love to hear from listeners. Please get in touch, anotherworldaudiobooks@gmail.com, or you can go to the website, and all the social media are linked there as well. So love to get the conversation going. Drop a comment on Spotify or YouTube is a great way to get in touch as well. So thanks guys for listening, and we'll catch you next week.